Hello, you've reached the Storied Human podcast, hosted by me, Lynn Thompson. Each week, I share a story, either an interview with someone fascinating or a short solo from me. I love your stories, and I learn so much from them. Hopefully you will too. So welcome. If you are new here, I'm so happy to have you. If you are a returning listener, many thanks. So here it is, the next episode of The Storied Human. Hello and welcome to The Storied Human. I'm Lynn Thompson, and today I have a really interesting author guest, Krysta Maravilla. She's an author, a wanderer, a believer of all possibilities, and her name means marvelous. So I think that has like a clue in it for her whole attitude towards life, which I haven't known her long, but I can tell that that's definitely her theme. She has written the coolest fantasy novel. I love fantasy books, and this one is a killer. It's called Spark, and it's the first book in a new adult fantasy series. Features action-packed scenes, compelling characters, and, my favorite, a strong heroine. Now, how do you say that heroine's name? Is it Faye?
I call her Fee.
Okay, good. I want to make sure I say it right. And welcome to you. It's so great to have you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I was so excited. And I'm especially excited because nobody can hear it, but you're very far away and in one of my favorite countries. Tell us where you are.
Right now, I'm in a coastal town in Valencia, Spain. I'm a wanderer.
I love it.
I try to get about.
And where were you born?
I was born in Massachusetts.
Okay, so you are from here.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you get to Spain? Like, how did you become such a wanderer?
So this goes. It's a little bit of a long tale, but bear with me.
It's fine. We love long tales here at Storied Human.
Okay, so I started my journey, my real healing journey in 2014-15. At the time, I was working full-time. My background's in mental health. I was working full-time. I owned a house. I was single. I'm kind of a single, kind of solitary gal. I was really burned out. And so eventually I came to a point where I had to make a decision if I wanted to change being miserable or continue on. And so that actually boils down to a question I constantly ask myself: do I want to thrive or do I want to wither? Well, in that time frame, in 2015, two things happened. One, I had a dream, and the dream was so amazing, and I normally don't dream. So I'll give you the end of the dream because it has nothing to do with Spark, though I did try to include it, and my editor was like, no go, it's not a fly.
She has a dream in the beginning, right? She has a recurring dream.
She does have a recurring. This dream is I'll say I ended the dream flying my own spaceship. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Hello.
I am doggy sitting, and somebody is very close right now that made a noise. In my dream, I'm flying my own small spaceship, and I just had dropped off my mom in this dream, but it wasn't my mom of this life. I was a single child. I was an only child of a single mom in that dream, and I felt so good. I was so happy. Like, my mom knew I was okay. I was flying back and doing the thing that I feel like I was supposed to be doing. I was flying my own spaceship through space. It was awesome. And I left that dream knowing I need to write it. And then I also needed to learn how to write, which is what Spark is about. But simultaneously, the other side of that was happening was my miserability was coming to a head, and my soul was telling me that I needed to leave New Hampshire. And I thought that California was going to be the spot. And so I did all of the things, look for a job, apply for the jobs, just et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to find a spot that would be my next home. But after months and months and months and months of nothing, I decided that I was just going to quit my job. I was going to rent out my whole house. The house. I gave almost everything I owned away. And I planned 3 months on the road. The first month was with one of my good friends. She rented the RV. I followed in my car, and then the next 2 months, I was like, oh, I'll just travel around California and I'll find my spot. A town will call to my soul, and that's going to be it. And then I saved, and so it was really scary when I decided to actually leave, like when I was because somewhere along the healing journey for me, integrity became a really big part. So what I would say to myself and what I say to you means that I have to do it. So I'm not saying things lightly anymore. There are times where I have to be like, I'm sorry, I overestimated, or that no longer fits what I'm going to do. But most of the time, especially when it comes to my wanderings and my own thrivability, I stick with it. So by saying it, I left. I followed my integrity. I knew if I didn't do this, I'd regret it, and I'd be miserable. I'd never change. And what ended up being, what was supposed to be 3 months, ended up being, I want to say 9 to 10. I had the first month with my girlfriend, her 4-month-old daughter, her 3-month-old son, and an au pair. We're just traveling back and forth. And then she went back and did her life, right? And then I continued onward with other things. And in that time frame, I started to unpack all of these beliefs and these identities and these layers. And I tried to write my dream. I tried to sit down and write it. And then I realized I was a horrible writer. I had no idea what the heck I was doing. Oh, it was bad. It was straight bad. And as you have read in my current book, there's a cast of characters. So in my dream, there's a cast of characters, but it's also much more diverse. And so I knew I couldn't give the dream justice by trying. And what I really needed to do was play. It's this ingrained, and this is what I need to break down a bit, is the ingrained belief that I have to be productive. I have to use my time to be doing things, like productive things. And so, but playing is just as productive. It's just as filling your cup. Anyway, so I ended up playing and hitting like about 35 national parks, solo hiking. I went down and had an opportunity to go to Costa Rica. I met my friend Valerie in Morocco, and we hiked Mount Tukal. It was so fabulous. And the whole time I just unraveled and unraveled. And so then I came back to New Hampshire. I ended up swinging back around. And I, at that point, found The Artist's Way with Julia Cameron. And I started doing morning pages religiously.
I love that book. That's such a great book. Yeah, that fits you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love her style of writing. I worked in, as I said, background in mental health. So I've worked in addictions, and I've worked in, and so I just love the way, specifically the addictions, because I feel like there's just this, it could be this rigid belief system, and she just blends it in so beautifully. And she reminds me of a little bit of just the meeting groups, and just anyway, I highly recommend, not just for the morning pages, but it's just for any creative that wants to reignite their relationship with who they are in a different way.
I think that's great advice. And I was just talking with someone about how people think of creative, they think they're not creative, but creative can be just the way you think. You don't have to write or paint or sculpt. You could be an incredibly creative problem solver, or you could be this just incredibly, the way you see the world. So I think it's a great book for everybody. I'm going to put that in the show notes. That's a great idea.
Yay. So as I was doing that, I have to, rejoin society because, bank funds and savings can only last so long. And so I did, but I made sure to find employment that was remote, because at that point, the idea, and I'm a little dramatic, so like the idea that I had to be locked in and imprisoned in like New Hampshire, which is over an exaggeration, to be real, but it feels that way. If I had to get a job that was like, no, you need to be here 9 to 5, or in my life, it probably been longer than that. And I couldn't. I think I replied to a job once, and it was after the trip. And they were like, oh, you can do it. You can work all these hours, but you have to role model only taking 2 weeks of vacation to your staff, and you can't take them together. And I was like, and you want to crush my soul? So we're not going to do that. And I'm not going to role model that. So I ended up getting a job that was remote, and I was able to move about and spend time in like Austin, Texas, or North Carolina, Tennessee. I ended up leaving my job in 2021, but while I was writing Spark, it started the month I got the job. And it was more I swear it was more my morning pages just urging me to do it, like sit down and do it. And so I did. I sat down and I had no idea what I was going to write, because it couldn't be my dream. But as I said like earlier, that I wanted to incorporate my dream somehow into the book. But my editor didn't like that. So, well, I probably did it really poorly. Let's just be real. And then when I sat down to write the book, I was under this mindset that I don't know how to write. And so I expected the book to be a failure. And it's changed, like the sentience and the energy has changed, but draft 1 was horrible. Draft 1, my poor editor got it, and she was supposed to do a developmental edit, and she was like, and let's just downgrade this to an editorial assessment, and so many things you can work on here. so kind. So I've very graciously and very gratefully learned a lot from all of my editors involved. But anyway, so I like Fabio. I called the book Fabio the whole time, because Fabio was like my little acronym, but just it rolled off the tongue better, because it really became more of the roll of the tongue, and a playful roll of the tongue. And a lot of people thought I was dating a Fabio. Yeah, there was one time
there's that famous, like, what do they call him? The model for a lot of romance novels with the long hair. He's a little bit older now, but what a hunk. Mm-hmm. So people think of that too. You know what I'm very impressed with is that didn't stop you. When you wrote your first draft and it needed so much work and you were like, right? It didn't stop you. You just were like, okay, I'll keep going. And that's so important, right? That's so important. Like, we can't just instantly have something that's good. We have to keep working. But sometimes I think we're taught, like, literally we're taught in America, like, oh, well, that's not for you. You know, you fall a little bit once, right? And everybody goes, oh, well, I guess that's not for me. But you didn't say that to yourself. You were like, okay, I'll learn this.
Yes. Now, I learned it with caveats that my ego is really fragile. So I'll be clear. So I wasn't in that time frame. I had to pull back from reading any good literature. Let me rephrase that. I took from reading the literature that I write, like fantasy literature, to reading paranormal romance, because I couldn't read in my genre because I would compare myself too much.
Aww.
And then I'd always find myself lacking, and it would be a block. And so anything that got in the way of me creating this, moving forward in the progression of finishing this book and finishing it to a level that I felt was decent. Yeah. I would just, all right, well, if I can't do that, then I'll do this. If that, like, I found some way to shift around it or just tantrum through it. I'll just be real too.
And this is all connected to that decision to really venture out and really put yourself out in the world and travel and break that connection to that conventional world. I feel like you sent your soul a message, like, I'm ready. And by breaking from your job and getting out there, it's hard to think differently and start a different venture like writing a book unless you really do change your whole thing. And that's what you did. I feel like you told your subconscious, like, we're different now. Come on. Like you sort of stoked the fires and then started the book. It's so cool because you did that for yourself and you woke yourself up and you're like, I'm not going back. And also what I'm hearing is that you just didn't let it stop you. You said, I can see and feel this book. I will get there. I might have to work on several drafts, but I don't care.
I mean, if you talk to my family, they'd be like, she was out of her mind. There was a lot of caring and a lot of crying and a lot of like frustration on my part. But and then also a lot of happiness and joy too.
Yeah.
But there's the negative was very prominent.
Families worry about us. Yeah. And maybe they're stuck in their, there's a fearful kind of, you got to do things this way and they're worried about you. And they often attach the crazy word. Yes, I know. I ran off to Spain right after college and I lived there and taught English and people thought I was nuts. It was a long time ago, but I wasn't nuts. It was such a cool experience. So I totally, like, in a small way, get what you're saying.
Yeah. And to be fair to my family, they're actually very supportive.
I'm sure they're wonderful, but they were a little worried, right?
Every time they're like,
well, it's kind of like, I'm a mom and that's what I do. I worry about them. But yes, I love the development of this whole huge shift in your life. You shifted your own life, like huge, in a huge way.
And just to kind of like hone in on that, it's not a one-time shift. It's a continual unraveling and moving.
I love the word unraveling because there is something to unravel, right? We're taught all these rules and the way to live, and you were right there with it. You had a job 9 to 5. You owned a house. You knew how to do it, right? You're right. You have to. It's a process.
Yeah, I actually think. So I'm going to share that this is on the agenda. Just I don't know where it'll be, but I have a book in me called Unraveling.
I was going to say you should write Unraveling. Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So this is just some fun thing. I love to stop by psychics. I just think it's the funnest thing. Especially when I wasn't in tune. Nowadays I go and they're like, this is what's happening. I'm like, darn, I already knew that. Oh. But back then I didn't. I wasn't as clear in my channel and my intuitive guidance system. And so I would stop by all sorts of roadside psychics while I was in, like, angel healers that are like whatever, anything. I didn't care along the journey. And what was really cool, it could have been like a little phone call angel healer from some referral, or like a slick car salesman where I almost want to like pick an energetic shower after seeing them. They all told me I should be writing down my story because I'm going to write it. All of them, not knowing a thing about me, all of them said this, and I thought it was the coolest. It obviously resounded in me. I used to note it. So there's this. I did track the time frame because I was going through a lot of national parks and I was doing a lot of unraveling. And so I think it's on the docket.
That's so cool. I love that. I think there are people that may look like shysters, right? But there's an element to them where they can actually, I just seen this myself. Like, one of the best readings I ever got was from this woman in a house dress sitting in like these suburbs, and she talked like this. And she's like, hun, blah, 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 blah. And I was just so put off. I was like, what could this person have to tell me? I was just really kind of judgmental. But people had recommended her highly, and she gave me the most amazing reading. So my point is, you just never know who's connected, right? You can't tell. You can't tell. I think that's so. They all said that. I love that. They all said the same thing to you.
They all did.
So, and there is this like feeling that, source or God or whatever speaks through other people, and so source was telling you, yeah, you're supposed to do this, using all these people to tell you that. That's another way to look at it, was that's a beautiful message that kept coming through.
Yes, absolutely. So,
that's really powerful. I can't wait to read the next book.
Well, that's going to be a standalone, probably memoir. I don't know. What I'll do with that.
Oh yeah. Well, you've got enough there to do a memoir, and it would be really fascinating. I mean, I'm fascinated already that you had the bravery. It's really very brave to do what you did. Let's not skip over that.
No, I will if I go back to that day when I left in 2016, I was shaking in my car. I had it packed. My parents and my sister and my 11th month nephew were waving goodbye.
Aww.
Shaking, like, no, I'm not going to cry. It's not going to be the worst decision. And I've got to do me. Like, I said I would do this. I'm going to do this. If it's a failure, it's fine. I'll come back. Like, I'm doing it. But I was literally trembling. And I find nowadays that fear for me, especially if it's literally not a life or death situation, it's very different if it's a safety thing. But fear for me is a great guidance system, because when I get a big burst of like, I know I need to lean into it. And I know I need to like figure out a new relationship with that fear and that element of whatever it is, because I need to be there.
That's so cool. It's the way it works, right? What we're afraid of is where we're supposed to go. But that's very hard to do. Like a lot of us are dissatisfied with our jobs or our life, or feeling like we need a change. But how did you, like, when you go back to that moment of like, I need to change this up, what made you think that? Like, was there a turning point? Because
I can tell you that I went through what I refer to as a dark night of the soul.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah, usually there's something, right?
Yeah. And so it wasn't one night or one thought, but it was what is I always struggled with my purpose. Like, what is my purpose? What am I, like, I love helping people, but that wasn't filling me. It was emptying me.
And I think that's amazingly interesting, because you were helping people. That's an incredible profession. But I love that you were brave enough to look and say, wait a minute, though, I'm not being filled. I'm not being helped. And a lot of people feel that way, but they don't do what you did. So it's pretty cool.
And I will say that those questions that I did bring up in the beginning, like, do I want to wither or do I want to thrive? Somewhere along the line, I literally had to boil it down to that simple question.
Yes.
And so when I sit down in a space, especially with some of the bigger decisions, like when I left my job in 2021, do I want to wither or do I want to thrive? And I knew that staying there with everything I was doing, I was already burnt out again. I wasn't going to thrive, and I wasn't willing to wither ever. So that's no longer an opportunity. I love feeling good in my body, my mind, and my soul, in all of the spaces. And so I do a lot of things to make sure that I do feel good, like getting up. We were talking about earlier, probably before the podcast, that I get up early so I can do my morning pages, which make me feel good. I then work out, which makes me feel good. I will then drink a lot of water, which makes me feel good. I will then eat and take my vitamins, all to feel good. I track my sleep. I'm that crazy person, but I know that, like, let's say if I intermittently fast typically, so I try to like stop eating at 5, and I do that because I sleep better. My body feels better. Like, I can track my heart rate and all of the things, and that's better. But so if I eat later, everything spikes. Anyway, so there's science to me, and like there's like this data-driven side of me, and then there's this really like ethereal, like, yeah, it's just
the woo-woo side. Yeah. But I love that. I love all that too, the data-driven and the tracking, because we have to love ourselves. That's where it all starts. And that's, to me, self-love is really taking good care of yourself, doing what you need to do to feel well. And we're no good to anybody else, and we can't love fully if we don't love ourselves. So you're like, you got it together. You're taking care of yourself. And that's, if you don't, who's going to do that?
Nobody is coming to my rescue. Period. I get to be the hero in my own journey. And it can be scary at times. It can be all sorts of everything. But at the end of the day, it's mine to hold and to cherish and to really gritty say that I looked in my shadows. I full on jumped in. And they're not as bad as they're not as bad.
Yeah. You walked through it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also curious that as you wandered around and did new things and saw new things, did you meet new people? Like, do you have friends that are different now?
I do have different friends, and I feel like every place I've gone to, I've typically picked up a friend or two. I'm very reclusive. I'm gonna just. It doesn't look like it because I'm actually pretty chatty, and I can be kind of that expert introvert. But I need a lot of time alone, especially if I'm writing. And then I was working a lot full time, so I just need it all the time. But I typically, so when I do meet people and I do connect, it's lovely, and I have in all of the places I have been.
Yeah. And you meet different people when you're putting out a different frequency. You're in a whole different place. And so you're attracting different people. And I noticed the few times I've traveled alone that you meet people that are traveling. Like, it's so cool. And you just instantly start talking. It's just a different connection. Because I like a lot of time alone too, but there's something different about when you're out there and people just find you. Like, I found people that were traveling and I would just start chatting them up.
Mm-hmm. It's easier to engage with somebody when you're alone. They accept you easy, like just more fluidly. It's easier.
It is.
But when you have a group with you or just one other person, then that changes the dynamic, and then typically you're not socializing with other people as well. And so
true.
Mm-hmm. I do love traveling, and I love connecting, and you never know. Like I can meet a soul because I was in Washington before this, so I can meet a soul in Washington and have her connection like still follow me out to Scotland possibly. And so it's great.
It is. It's lovely though.
Yeah.
So when did you start the book? Like, how did that fit in with all this wandering and reconfiguring of your life?
Okay, so I got back to New Hampshire and I started the morning pages, and then I started writing the book in 2018, April 2018. And at the end of that month, I agreed to a full-time remote employment too. So simultaneously, of course, I took things on. And I pantsed.
What was the remote work? I missed that. I'm sorry.
Well, I was working for an insurance company reviewing medical necessity for people staying inpatient. Actually, that job was emergency rooms, whether they would go in if they met medical necessity to go inpatient or partial. Anyway, so my job, I actually really did like it, but it was a lot of heavy work. You just heard heavy stories all the time. Yeah. It was very rare. Like, you're not going to hear, hey, somebody saved somebody's life or something, or like really good news once in a while.
It's going to weigh on you. Yeah, I would imagine, right? It weighs on you.
It's all reasons why people need to stay inpatient, because they're unwell, their background history, their living situations, the whole thing. Anyway, and it was I think especially it was especially tough on the emergency room side. I ended up switching to concurrent review, which means I talk to hospitals instead of the emergency room department, because I was working with specific state Medicaid at the time, and it was, the kids' stories, oh my gosh, my heart would break with, you have to, it was tough. The whole story, everything, but it was just tough. So, but as I said, I didn't mind the job, and I got to travel while I worked, and then I got to write. My first draft in 2018 took a year. I want to say it was about 175,000 words with a backstory to it. I don't know what I submitted to my editor, but she was kind enough to say, yeah, try again. And so then I found Kelly, my writing coach, as I was gearing up to try again. And this is a side note, but it delayed me a little bit. At the time, I was collecting people's love stories. I feel like, yeah, love for me comes in so many different forms, different shapes, and it's just beautiful, right? It's like the rainbow, it's a spectrum. And when I ask people for their love stories, typically I get, like, I don't have a love story. I'm not, married, or, I can't wait to tell you about my romantic love story, or anyway, it's always romantic based, typically. And so one of my goals was to really kind of induce, or not induce, but inspire people to see that love is everywhere. We just have to be on that frequency of looking for it. And it could be a smile with a micro smile with a stranger. And that could shift their day, their lives. I've heard stories of people being suicidal, and then they see somebody smile at them and it'll literally stop them from doing it. Like, so the power that a smile has to a stranger, period, is so beautiful. Anyway, so I was collecting love stories, but then COVID hit and people got scared, and it was already a lot of, like, I was already budding, like, my ability to, getting a love story and doing all of these things and doing the social media, which was a strain for me, all of the strain and the expansion. So I gave up the love stories and I focused on the actual story. And so I started writing again in probably March of 2020, and wrote the full draft all the way through. I don't know when I finished that, but it was done with 203,000 words. Oh, I do. I think it was finished right before December, because I handed it off to a different editing team in December.
Wow.
And then I trimmed it down. Kelly helped me trim it down. She's amazing, amazing soul. We got it down to like 193 and then sent it off, because they charge you per word.
Whoa.
So,
that's right, they do, don't they?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh
yeah. So I've spent a lot of money on editors, but I've learned a lot. And
yeah,
that editing team, they actually held my manuscript for a very long time, but they gave me fabulous feedback. One of them highlighted every single repeat word I had in the manuscript. And then, oh yeah, that face, I love it. And then they went ahead and told me what words I leaned heavily on. So not only was it was so much. I don't like the word that anymore. I think I'm getting a little bit more lenient, because the shock and trauma of, like, seeing all those that's has worn a little bit. But I used words very heavily that, by pointing it out in the way that they did, helped level up my craft, because then they were like, if you use look, you're not describing, you're telling us. But if you describe, and if you do X, Y, Z, then you're doing it. And then you're engaging us in a story. And so they, in a way, that particular edit particularly was one of the hardest I've ever experienced, but also the best, because now you have my imagery is better, my world building is better, my writing is better, everything's better. And then the other gentleman in that helped me with more world building. And that year, I was finally, still fragile ego, able enough to go into a writing class for the first time and start trying to learn the craft, because I was too scared to learn before. I just needed to write. I just needed to get a story out. I needed to write. Don't tell me how to do it better, because I can't do it better. I just like, no, I'm going to just do it. I was too scared. So
it's a rocky road. I know. Yeah.
Yeah. And then with their advice, I sat down for version 3. So version 3, I relocated to Asheville, North Carolina, to work full time and to write. And by relocated, I just wandered for a few months. I really liked it. And
In the mountains, I heard it's pretty.
It's really beautiful.
It's really beautiful.
And the people are very lovely. And so I ended up staying there, and I worked full time, and I wrote, and that's where like my struggle with descriptions. And so I'd get up. Sometimes I would really resist descriptions and creating scenes. Now I find it pleasurable, and I'm almost sad when a scene doesn't like really. So in like one of my books in the novella, I have a scene where we hone in on a certain thing, and then it kind of travels a little bit through chapters, but you get this good feeling of it. And I really love that there's a sensation in my chest that happens when I find an imagery like that can pull the scene together and her thoughts together. Anyway, it was learning to lean into that, but also somewhere in that space, I realized the story wasn't my story. It was Fee's story, my main character. And that transition also helped me like move away from the perfectionism and like really open myself up. I was doing a lot of meditation at the time to like what is coming through, like what do you want me to say, and what is important for your voice and that needs to be heard to others. But I mean, I did burn out again, and that's where I decided if I had to make a choice, do I want to wither or do I want to thrive? Because my work wasn't able to accommodate reducing my hours when I asked. And so I decided to thrive, and I left that employment and took a whole new level of fear.
Wow.
And here I am now. I mean, I still walk in fear, but it's just, I think that the adventurous part, I feel supported, I guess you could say. Like, I don't think that I will fail. I think I'll just learn. I don't think I'll ever go with my needs unmet. I might just not get what I want sometimes. Like, you know, I'm going to be cared for. And not because I need somebody caring for me, but because it will come to me when I need it. Right. Kind of mentality. And it's shown up a time and time again. And so why would I no longer trust in that? But I burnt out. And so I sent draft number 3 to my editor. And I knew something was wrong with the middle. And so I was hoping she'd give me feedback on the middle, and I finished about like 3/4 of that draft, and I sent it with the old ending that I hadn't edited. And so she got back to me after I left my job in 2021 with the feedback, and I thought it'd be a quick turnaround, but it was not so quick. There was 2 things that she suggested. One was scratch the whole story and write it in terms of like somebody going to a magical academy kind of thing. And I was like, that's not my story. That is not Fee's place. That is no. And then the other was pull out the entire middle. And there was a character in there that I loved and a different story. It got too complicated with the stories. And so pull out the whole middle and then patch it together and do that. And so I decided to go that way because, you know, it needed help. I knew that. And she also was like, Krysta, you can take that whole middle and you can use it in book 2. And I was like, oh,
I love it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really grateful for the amazing humans I work with. Yeah. And so it creatively like tore out my heart. In addition to the fact that I was already so scared with leaving my job and putting myself out to be this full-time writer. And then not only that, like I did branding photos, which people might be like, oh, you glammed up and like, you know, looked all pretty. Oh, that was scary as all heck for me because I'm not used to putting myself out there. I would, you know, be that hermit, not leave. Going grocery shopping can be a hardship for me sometimes. I'm getting better. And I do, I'm not gonna lie. There were times where the people are like, "Have you gone? How's your groceries? You want to go food shopping? Are you taking a fast because you've not gone grocery shopping?" And I'm just lazy, human. I'm lazy. Like, and food is just not much of a driver for me. But unless it goes into like, I need to make sure I feel good in my body,
Right.
and I know that intermittent fasting is a good thing, so sometimes I lean on that in my laziness. The creative side took a huge hit after her feedback, and it took me like 3 or 4 months to really get momentum back into the story and to like pull it together to what it is in its current format. So there's that fun thing, and so I ended up. At the time, I was in Delonga, Georgia. Well, I started in New Hampshire, went to Delonga, then went to Tennessee, Kentucky area, and then came back up to New Hampshire and just wrote. And I took from April to the end of August to do that. And I was barely a human to anybody. Like legit. I was like, I'm working, I'm busy, I'm in my world, guys.
Yeah.
I gotta get this done. I feel so grateful for the friends that are still with me. I'll say that. And then I finished the novel and I handed it off to my editor, and I planned to celebrate this. It just coincided. I booked a trip during COVID that got rescheduled. And so I was going to hike Salcantay Pass in Peru, go to Machu Picchu, and then hike Rainbow Mountain. And it was already all purchased, and I just had to like reschedule all of the things. So I did. So once I handed off my manuscript to my editor, and she knew, this is where I'm leading you into a catastrophe here. Full warning. I handed it off to the editor, and she was going to give it back to me on September 14th. I got back, I think on that day or the day before, from my adventures in Peru. Well, I got an email while I'm still there that she's 2 days late. All right. I think it was 2 days. She was going to be late. And then I don't hear from her. And so I email her midweek the next week or towards the end of it. And she's like, yeah, it's going to be a little later. Okay. So I'm supposed to post. In my head, I was going to publish it on October 11th. And she knew that. Okay. So 2 more days. Okay. So 2 more days. 2 more days. 2 more days. I'm like panicking now. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Feel my pain here. It gets worse. It gets worse. It's awesome. And so I talked to her and I was like, Krysta, like I need this book published before November because I got this thing in November for the book that I did. So like, I'm going to get it published before. So let's pick a date, October 22nd. And that's when I'm publishing it. So you've got a few more days, but you got to give it to me. 2 more days. 2 more days. 2 more days. So I'm like trying not to be a panic hot mess. I'm pretty panic hot mess anyway. And in that interim, my cousin shows up to New Hampshire, and I visit him. And he's like, "Hey, you want to go on a spontaneous road trip with me?" And I was like, "Yeah." I had my laptop with me. Had I not had my laptop and everything, I would have been like, maybe no. I literally left the diner I met him in like up, like, I don't know where we were, Plymouth, somewhere north, Dover, New Hampshire, and drove all the way down to first Massachusetts and then down to Kentucky that night. Anyway, we started this road trip with him, his 2 kids, me, and I'm waiting. It's October 11th, and I'm waiting.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm waiting, and I'm trying not to panic, and I'm waiting, and I have my laptop with me, and they all know that I'm going to work on this. And on Friday, the 14th, my editor gives me the novel, and of course, it's the busiest day. We're in South Dakota. We're doing all of these fun things, and then I start night driving that night, and so I get it midday. And I did the really bad. This was a bad choice. I set up pre-order on Amazon for 10/22. So I had to get it on. And I didn't know the repercussions because I walk into this like a bull in China shop. I just fall on my face until I learn the lesson. So Okay, so I have to get my book uploaded to Amazon by sometime on the 17th. Okay, whatever. I'm gonna start. I get it on the 14th, and it's midday. So first thing I do is read her editorial assessment, where she tells me the map that I had has like 2 spelling errors in it, and there's no compass, all of these things wrong with it. And I thought it was a beautiful map, and it is a beautiful map. I'm grateful for the designer. But I emailed him and I was like, oh my God, this is everything that she said wrong. Knowing that's probably gonna go to print anyway. Priority is the spelling errors. He emails me back a blank map and he tells me he's moving and he can't help me until November.
Ouch.
Oh, yeah. So, all right. I then, luckily, I was talking with my book cover designer. And so I was like, oh my God, Matt, I just help me. And so she did. And my book cover designer is also, literally, I'm so grateful for everybody. So she fixed just the spelling errors and I could at least go with that. My edit, then I didn't have time, right? I work alone and quiet and I'm constantly with like music and so I'm in a car, it's midday, it's loud and they should be having fun and I'm not going to try to dampen their fun and we're doing things. And so I accept the advice of my brother and hit accept all to the changes. And then yes, your face is awesome too.
I mean, that's scary, right?
Oh, well, we'll get into it. So then I hit every single comment in the letter as well as in the actual draft, resolve them, and sent it off to proofreaders. And I did this as quickly as I could humanely do. I knew I couldn't read it. I also something about me is when I'm super like panicky elevated and like really insecure, my brain just shuts off. So even if I was reading it, I was too it wasn't going to imprint. Yeah. So I sent it out to my proofreaders and we finished the really busy end of the trip, right? Up until the 17th, because that's how it rolls. And I get home, I hadn't heard a peep from my proofreaders and their friends. So I didn't expect them to drop their lives and do this. I did touch base with one and he couldn't touch it until the next week. And then the other I use a writing platform called Booksicle, so I could see what she read. And she'd only read a chapter. And I was like, all right, okay. So in my panic, I posted something on Facebook looking for proofreaders on the fly. And two beautiful humans popped up. And then the rest of the time I learned how to format the book. Booksicle helps me, but I had no idea what I was doing for ebooks. So my brother also helped me. And then I uploaded it onto Amazon with like 20 minutes to spare.
Oh my God.
Yes. And I was very anxious about it. So the next day, literally I wake up to, you have critical errors in your manuscript. My editor had put in parentheses in 2 different spots in the book, you need to add detail here, asterisks, and hadn't attached a comment to it. So when I was going through all of that, I missed it. So now I'm like flaring with panic. I could deal with something that was like, small, but this felt really big, right? I really strive for perfection. It's something I need to work on. Anyway, or I am constantly working on, because this is a great example of how I cannot be perfect. I fixed those errors, and one of the people that helped me, that stood out from that Facebook group, was an editor, and she offered to proofread it for like a literal proofread edit. And so we did that on the fly. And her edits, what I was doing, I was pulling them out because I didn't know her. I hadn't worked with her before. And I didn't like how she changed some of my wording. So I was pulling out a chapter at a time, bopping it into, because it's too long of a manuscript to do at once. So she was giving me sections to fix. So then I was doing line by line edits, accepting, finalizing those things. And then I was copy and pasting it and putting it back into Booksicle. Okay. So I did this to 45% of my paid for edit, because at that point she burned out and it was Friday right before. So I thought I I could then take the manuscript and then upload it to Amazon, and they would just fix, like I would fix
They would just replace it, right?
No. So
Yeah.
Amazon, when they do their pre-orders, now again, boil in a china shop, Krysta, I didn't realize that when you put for pre-order, your pre-order locks any changes 72 hours before they release the book. So I didn't realize that. That was why the countdown was so, my brother's like, I never had this happen to me. My brother's also an author. And so I was like, oh. So I'm having a meltdown because I've talked to 3 Amazon reps. There's nothing they can do to help me out. Like, the only way to resolve this is to stay up until they release the book that night, whatever time, and then immediately upload this new draft to Amazon and hope that they do approve it. And so people, when they do download it, because they, pre-sales, they get the non-critical errored book. So I did that because there was no other option, right? I'm a hot mess at this point. I'm not doing very well. I'm very emotional. And so I get that done, and I'm not telling anybody I'm releasing the book. I've got a few people in my newsletter at this point, but other than that, nobody really knows. And so once I figure out, once I realized that they took the copy that I had sent in, I was relieved, and I ordered a proof, a physical proof. And I walked away from the book. I didn't look at it anymore. The book arrived, the physical proof from Amazon arrived on, I don't know, the 27th of that week of October. And so I start reading it. I get to chapter 5, and I realize I didn't copy and paste 3/4 of chapter 5.
Ouch.
Now, I did it in a way that it didn't look like, I guess if you didn't know it wasn't going to be there, then you wouldn't have known it. So that was just coincidence. But that happened. And then as I got to chapter 14 and 15, I just got enraged. 15, my editor had cut and parsed and then redid the whole chapter, redid it. And I, 1, wasn't expecting it, but 2, I didn't like it. And so I didn't think I could do anything to change that. What I could do was make some minor changes in what was done, and then move on. But I stopped reading at that point because I hated my book and I was so angry at everything. You hear often, if it's supposed to be, it's going to be easy for you. That's such a lie.
Kind of BS, yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be easy moments in it and it will feel good, but there's going to be a lot of hard moments too. And there's got to, easy, I don't think we ever earn anything without having persistence and dedication and falling on our faces over and over and over again.
I totally get that. In fact, I was thinking as you told this story, you have a moment, I think, and I've been in this position because I format and publish a lot of books. Everything always goes wrong, and you're just like, will this ever be over? Will I ever get it done? And you learn persistence. You do, because what else can you do? But it sounds horrific. It just kept happening, it's like something else.
Oh, I kept going. So I fixed the errors. I took 100% of my paid for proofreaders stuff. I integrated it at that point, and then I uploaded it, and I walked away, and I hated my book. And I did what I needed to do in November with it, and I couldn't look at it. I was every time so angry. And then I got back from a writing conference in Vegas, and I then started writing the novella for it. And then I shifted off to write in Washington, and I plotted out all of book 2, because so book 1's pretty complex. So tracking all of those threads for me needs to be really deliberate. Yeah. Which takes away from some of the fun creative writing, because but so I did that. I was ready, locked and loaded for book 2, but I made myself read book 1 from cover to cover, because, and this was February, because there were things that I 100% forgot, and I would not have been able to thread in if I hadn't gotten the feel of the book again, right? And I've been avoiding it for months. So I did that. And the same visceral, angry reaction happened at 14:15. So I pull up my editor Parissa's edits, and she'd cut like I want to say like 5 to 7 pages. And I say that because I had to increase the font size so that messes up the pages. But a lot of pages from 14, including a scene that was her first magic use scene. That in it, she had to come to a decision, and she's staring at a root, like a rock that's being encircled by life's root, and she's thinking how, and there's fissures in the rock, how life's roots are just squeezing her, and she can relate to being that rock, right? And so she deleted that, but kept all of the references. I continued onward about the root and the rock, and so things like that happen. That, I mean, she's amazing. She's amazing. She helps me out so much. I wish she just kicked it back to me. Her process is different. We've talked about it since, and I will 100% still work with her still, and I'm grateful for all of this. But anyway, so I kept on going through the book, and at one point I realized I need to pull it from the market, and I'm going to fix it. Oh, I did that.
No freaking way.
Oh yeah. This is frowned upon if people don't know.
But I do hear you. The angry feeling never went away, and you wouldn't have been happy with it.
And I didn't want this. There's two things I wanted more. One is, this is my new career, right? And I take it very seriously, and I want to put out a product that feels good to me. But two, I also didn't want these energies of all of those years of accumulated stress and all of my catastrophes kind of trailing along into book 2 and 3 and the rest of the series. I was done with the drama. I think it's hilarious now. I mean, it was not then. There was a lot of times. I'm not much of a crier, but I cried a lot. And that's fine. I mean, it's good to let things out. And so I'm huge about manifesting. So I 100% believe that there is going to be a lot of readers that will read my book. And I would rather have them read the book that feels right and do it right from the beginning, even though it couldn't have been from like the first 100 that bought the book. And I'm very grateful and humble for those who supported me and bought that first book. So I wanted to fix it now before it went wide, and I couldn't do it.
That's smart.
But it was a hard decision because a lot of people spent good money on my book, and I felt bad that I'm now putting out a different version. But I sat in the decision, made it, and announced it. And then I took each chapter out. I tweaked each chapter just a tad, or maybe some more in certain chapters. And while doing that, I sat through all of the frustrating emotion, the amount of pressure I had, like, I need to do this now. It needs to be ready now. It should be done. I'm so enraged. It's not perfect. Whatever. It's so bad. I actually fell in love with my book. And
there you go.
To what it could work for me. It's not perfect. It's still my debut novel. And I'm sure plenty of people can tear it apart and, have at it if that's what you want to do and want to direct your energy. But I'd appreciate it if you kept that energy to you, though. Like, rip it apart. But it cleared all of that for me to now move onward with everything. Because after I did that full, very intensive edit, I then edited Spared for the last time, and then I'm now moving, and then I moved into book 2. So I wrote about just shy of 40,000 words, 39,000 words at the beginning. So that's just the beginning of book 2. It's probably going to be 150,000, maybe more. We'll find out. And I like, no way do I want to feel good about all of it.
Of course you do. It's your baby.
And so that's my fun story. And now I launched a Kickstarter, and that was, by all accounts, very successful. And now I'm launching the actual book on the 4th. It's the second launch, but this one I'm actually putting time and energy into trying. I'm not scared.
Yeah.
I'm not scared to not be seen. I was scared to be seen. I was scared to say, hey, here's my book. I was scared to like maybe, I don't know what I was scared of all of like being judged.
Definitely. We all feel that, but it's huge because it's a whole new thing for you and you're putting yourself out there.
3. So I have 3 in the main trilogy. It's going to be,
That's so cool.
and this is me nerding out on you right now. So it's Spark, Sunder, and Soar. And because Spark is where she's awoken into her gift, her magic. Sunder is because we all have to, when we're awoken, it doesn't mean that everything's easy. We have to split apart and drop the things that no longer serve. So, and this is all while other things are going on in this book. And then Soar is her integration and kind of realizing her power. And then Spared is the novel, and that happens when she is 18. So the main trilogy is when she's 24. This goes back in time. And it's a different story and a different feel to it. And she has to battle being Fee, an assassin, going into a situation where, I guess I'll just say it. I'm trying to like avoid the context of it, but so Fee agrees to go undercover into a sex trafficking organization to help break it down, but she can't go in as Fee the assassin and just do her normal assassin-like thing. She has to go in as her alter ego, her like, and that's Lady Orphine. And Lady Orphine is weak and sick and timid, and she's got Fee does too, an aversion to touch, and she doesn't like to speak, and somebody in the organization, the head guy of the organization, is obsessed with Fees. He collects Fee lookalikes. And so Fee agrees to go in because they would be able to identify him. She's pretty sneaky in general, so like they think she's given permission to kill him if she needs to, but she doesn't want to because she wants to succeed in taking down the whole organization.
Take the whole thing down, yeah.
Who else is in, right? So she's now locked into this more of an internal battle between like her Lady Orphine, like she's got trauma behind her, and I walk a fine line. And it's better read after Spark because you can probably pick up the nuances of where they actually use magic to make sure that she is safe, but they cusp the line of it. And then she starts to think, so the book Spared, she starts to think, because you'll have to read it, but she, like, if my life was different, it would be worse. You'd have to read the book, the novella. But if like my life with Grum, you probably know Grum. So my life with Grum was pretty bad, and if he hadn't done all of these things, and I hadn't met Kyra, and I hadn't, so things like I try to like put in these levels of.
And I do hear that a little bit. What I hear from other people too is when you get deep enough and empathetic enough with your characters, they tell you what they want to say and do. And you're sort of waiting for that. It's so cool because that process is the real deal. You don't just approach it from outside. You get so into it that they tell you. Did you always like fantasy and sci-fi, or what did you read growing up?
So my grandmother was a professor in English. She was actually a really cool lady.
Okay.
She was a cool lady. And so she influenced me on some of the works, like, Lord of the Rings, I remember reading with her, The Hobbit, but also was an avid romance reader. Avid. I think we buried her with a romance book.
Aww.
And so but she was also an avid writer herself. The story, I'm making it a story, I'm sorry that I'm so verbose here, was really good friends with Andre Norton. And so, I'm not sure if you know Andre, she's a fantasy writer.
Okay.
Back in the day, and Andre was male name because at the time they wouldn't let females publish the work. And so she was friends with, they'd exchange work, and I would read a lot of her work. And I was influenced by her fantasy. So I when I was young, that was my
interesting background. Yeah, I was obsessed with sci-fi as a child. I read a lot of sci-fi, And I think it just goes right in. I mean, I just like effortlessly moved into fantasy because it's just this beautiful connection. But yeah, there's a background, and it's sort of genetic, being a writer.
Yeah, my grandmother was a writer, my dad is a writer, my brother is a writer. I've got a lot of creatives. I've got a cousin who's in LA doing acting. I've got another cousin who's built something that's.
So is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners about? I think that you really have a grasp on the whole painful process of bringing a book to the world. Is there any advice that you would give somebody who's considering writing a book or in the midst of writing a book?
Oh, well, I have a lot.
That's a killer question, I realize, but I just want to leave it open for you.
Sure. Lessons I learned up front. One, don't do pre-orders unless you have an actual book in hand.
Right, okay.
A month or two ahead, right? Let's start there. But if you have a dream and you are uncertain and there are people around you that aren't supportive of it, then I was talking about this with somebody earlier today. It could be echoes, like they could be like, "Oh, you're writing," or they just keep interrupting your writing. Find a way to surround yourself with what you need in the time that you're writing, and also eventually find your tribe of writers, because
right.
We're constantly told that being a creative, we have to do it alone. Writers do things alone. I embodied that for a long time. I was alone, and I'll say I was too scared to identify and to be like, hey, I'm here. I wouldn't have even known how to interact. So if that's you, I totally understand. Feel free to email me. I'll give you an energetic hug. We're not alone. The reality is there are groups out there of people, so many. I'll drop one Facebook group that I'm a part of, and I feel really grateful to be a part of, because I think their energy is about all of us rising together, and they help people rise together. And they're very clear on boundaries with it. It's 20 books to 50K. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but that program that group is awesome. Those people, you can just drop in and say, yeah, I've got a problem, or I'm doing really good. You can just browse through people's success stories where they literally break down what they did to dollar amounts, not lying. And so you can understand that this is a huge business side instead of the writing side alone. Because once you have a book, now you have to sell it. Now you have to do other things. And I avoid social media like the plague. I was it was that outreaching, the communication, probably the hermit in me.
It's really hard if you're not naturally into it. It's very difficult, but it's a mandatory part of marketing now, and a mandatory part of letting people get to know you. It's very hard. I get it.
It's a challenge. So something I would recommend for writers now is there's two things on the marketing side. One is, be part of groups that will talk to you about marketing and listen and look and pick up cues. Social media isn't for your friends and family. Social media is for your soon-to-be empire, right? Okay. And so you want those clients, those supporters of yours that's who you're talking to. You're not talking to your friends and family. They may be part of that for sure. Yeah. But you're doing something different. And so you need to make sure, and by doing that, you can start now. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it's probably better if you make it not perfect. So then it eases the strain, right? And then you find your rhythm and your schedule of posting, and you do your thing there. And then there's actually a lot. As a writer, we have to always take care of ourselves first. And it's I've heard of stories. I luckily haven't had this happen to me where I'd have to have a workout for it to be how it did. But piracy of works is a thing, as well as it's a thing, unfortunately. And if you're enrolled in Kindle Unlimited, it becomes more of a thing, because then they'll pull your book off the market because somebody pirated your work and is on a Google site. And so you can lose a lot of money. But I've also heard stories, and I think this is also horrible, where other authors will report to Amazon that there's copyright infringement with your book to pull your book off the market for competition. All I say is make sure you do the right thing for you. If you have an LLC and there's a copyright infringement, you're financially protected by that. So there's small things that you can do that can set you up slowly as you move forward in your career of a writer. And to know that like those people are like the tiny tadpoles, I think, in the fish of the sea. There are many more really good-hearted people. Like the other day, I put out a cut scene in one of my newsletters. And I'd never done that before, but I cut it from book 2 because I had a developmental edit done on book 2's partial portion of it. I had no idea how to get it out to people. So I literally shot a woman on Facebook that I'm part of her Facebook group. I've talked to her maybe once or twice when I like author questions when I released my first book initially. And she, within like an hour, she sent me what she did, like broke it down. I literally replicated. That people are so kind. Just don't spin your wheels.
More of them, right? This is such good advice, such practical good advice. So I think people will really be grateful. I think you'll save some people some time. So that's fantastic that this is my favorite thing when somebody goes through stuff and then shares. And I think most people are good-hearted. You know, we wouldn't have survived as a species if we hadn't, selected for altruism. That's what I always say. Like, how would we have survived if we weren't connected and supportive of each other? We wouldn't. So the percentage of people who are mean, it's small. I mean, those are the ones that get the press. Those are the ones we talk about. But in reality, most people are good-hearted. That's what I find.
Yeah, and they give us the opportunities to learn. There are programs out there that will protect your work from piracy. And there are things out there that, like, if you do your LLC, that's a level of protection. And you will have so many more people standing up for you and help, and like, oh, like, this is what you should do. This is how we can help. It's fabulous. Yeah.
That's fantastic. What a story. My goodness. I just was like enthralled because I don't know the reality of what it's like to bring something, a work of fiction, to its conclusion. And who knew? I love your story and I love where you're at right now. And I can't wait to see, books 2 and 3 and that perhaps memoir unraveling that might be coming. So I'll put everything we talked about in the show notes and I'll put your contact info. And thank you so much. It was like really cool.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
I super appreciate it.